Hey guys, Rico Rocks here. It's been a while since I made a YouTube video, but as they say, better late than never. Today I'm going to show you some Dogbone controllers, obviously. Here's what an NES Dogbone controller looks like. This is the official Nintendo one. I'll make a separate video on this one. This is actually one of my favorite NES controllers. Way better than the rectangular controller. Then again, if we didn't have the rectangular controller, we wouldn't have this Dogbone controller, so... But in my opinion, I like the Dogbone. It feels more ergonomic and comfortable in the hand, especially with the rounded on the back. The buttons feel great in my opinion. I mean, they really feel great. The B and A, the select and start, nice rubberized feeling, and the D-pad, so comfortable. I can play a lot of hours of an NES game with this controller. But today we're going to take a look at two third-party alternatives to the official Nintendo one. Let's set the Nintendo one to the side like that. And let's grab two different boxes. These are just the boxes. I already unboxed them. We're going to take a look at two different ones. We're going to take a look at the Tomee one and the Retrobit one. They're both available. You can get them on Amazon or eBay, etc. This is a video on what is a good alternative to the official Nintendo one, since these days these are becoming more expensive. At least what I checked online, so let's go ahead and take a look at the two. In fact, I actually have them out of the box right now, so here they are. The one on the left is the Retrobit, and the one right there is the Tomee version. Let's take a look at the Retrobit one first. You got your same, here's a comparison between the official and the Nintendo one. The major difference is, well, there are several differences, obviously. This one says Retrobit and this one says Nintendo. Another difference is, look at the select and start, as well as the font for the B and A. It's more different. In fact, let me zoom in on the B and A. Here's the Retrobit ones, here's the Nintendo ones. It's hard to tell on camera, but they used a slightly different font. Select and start look the same, but the buttons themselves, while these are rubber, listen, these are plastic. And the D-pad, now of course the Nintendo one is amazing. It rocks back and forth. The Retrobit one, well, you want to be careful not pressing down on all four. It's just like the Retro Duo one, but not as stiff as the Retro Duo one. So my advice to you is, if you're going to use the Retrobit one, be sure you don't press on the center. You want to press on the outer corners. Although, it's not that hard pressing around and stuff. Here's the Tomee one. Out of the two, this one is slightly worse, in my opinion. You got your B and A, select and start. These are also plastic, but the select and start on this one actually feels great. It's nice and raised, so if Tomee did one thing right, is the select and start are nice and sticking out. The D-pad, just like the Tomee or the Retrobit one, you can press down all four directions. So if you want to use this one, I recommend basically jamming it on the sides. And so basically, I'm going to test out all three controllers with the same game. And what game am I going to test out each controller with? Well, none other than basically a good old copy of Super Mario Bros. 3. This game is a perfect example to test out which way you're going. And first we'll start with the Nintendo one, because that's a good way to tell how the game works with that controller. So I'm going to go ahead and move the camera to the TV and start filming with that controller. Then I'll do the Retrobit one and then the Tomee one for last. First up, the original Nintendo controller. Works like it should. Basically, I'm running left and right. No button lag input. Or input lag, that is. And that's the Nintendo controller. Perfect. Now let's take a look at the Retrobit one. Now here's the Retrobit one in action. The only complaint I have so far is the cord is a little thin and the length of it is not the best. But aside from that, let's see how it performs. Now I mentioned the D-pad you can press in all 4 directions, but that might or might not affect gameplay, depends on which game you're playing. So far, the buttons feel very good actually. The A and B feel very nice, and even the D-pad itself is actually not that bad. And I don't see any button input lag. Overall, very impressive, especially for games like Super Mario Bros. 3. I'd say this would be a good alternative to the official Dogbone controller. The only thing is you'll need an extension cable or something to make your to sit across if you're going to sit across from your TV stand. Yep, there's the 3 right there. There we have it, the Retrobit NES Dogbone controller. And now, last but not least, let's take a look at the Tomee version. Now, last but not least, the Tomee version of the NES Dogbone controller. Here's the Tomee one in action. Just like with the Retrobit one, the cord is kind of short, so I would recommend an extension cable. The select button feels great. I love how raised it is. The start button is not that bad. Let's see how this D-pad affects on gameplay to see if it's good or not. Well, even though how mushy it is, it doesn't feel that bad. And so far, not bad. That was my phone and my tablet that went off. Don't worry about those. So far, my only complaints with this controller is how mushy the D-pad is. What I recommend is probably cracking it open. There's a YouTube video on how to open up a Tomee Dogbone, or the guy who actually modified it by using a miniature figurine stand and basically glued it onto the D-pad to make it feel more like the official Nintendo one. This is actually not that bad of a controller. Overall, I'm very impressed. The only problem I have with this controller is, well, how mushy the D-pad is on the Tomee controller. I love how the select and start feel. I'm not going to argue with that, so... Now let's go over my final thoughts and show you the differences between cord lengths, so let's get right to it. And that's basically my comparison between the 3 different Dogbone controllers, the official Nintendo one, which is obviously the best, the Retrobit one, and the Tomee one. Overall, I'm very impressed with all 3 of them, actually. This one I give a 10 out of 10 because it's obviously Nintendo, so anything from Nintendo is basically that good. Or amazing, unless it's like the Power Glove or any of those third-party accessories that are bad. But this is actually one of their good ones. The Retrobit one's also pretty good, actually. My only concern is how thin the cord is and how short it is. The Tomee one fixes the problem with the how thin the cord is, but my major concern is actually the D-pad, because it feels like it's mushy in there. In fact, it feels like it's synced in, but you could always crack it open and glue a miniature figurine base by cracking it and basically super gluing it on there. If you want to see a video on how to do that, well, I'll put that in the description for the Tomee version. I think that might work for the Retrobit one, but it actually sticks out just like that one, so I think that's only necessary for this one. Overall, would I recommend any of the Dogbone controllers? Well, if you want to get your hands on the Nintendo one for a dirt cheap price, I recommend it. That's the best one. My next advice would be getting the Retrobit one. That's the second best one. The Tomee one comes in third in my opinion. So far, as of the time I'm making this video, these controllers, the Retrobit and the Tomee one, are actually very good alternatives. The only concern is you'll need an extension cable or have your system close by, so Also, one more thing I'd like to throw in before I end off this video. If you were wondering about cord length, the Nintendo one's the longest. At least the American one. The Japanese one is about the same length as these two, if not maybe shorter, I don't know. I don't have an AV Famicom controller. Should get one, but they're kind of pricey. But aside from that, if you're looking for a good alternative to the Nintendo one, I would recommend the Retrobit one. The Tomee one would be a nice alternative as well. The only issue with the Tomee one is basically how sunken the D-pad is. It may affect gameplay, it may not. I played Mario Bros. 3 on all three of them. It hasn't affected it with me. I've also played Super Mario Bros. With all three of them. No effective gameplay. I've also played Dr. Mario and other games, and they all worked just fine. So basically, you're basically playing Battleship. Because either you're getting a hit, a good item, or a miss, which is basically defective. Or at least conks out on you. So, just something I like to throw out. Since I got nothing else to say, that's it. Basically, I'm signing off. Have a nice day.